Hey all, Siege here, and today I have a pretty important question to ask all of you. When the time inevitably comes that you and the Lotus come face to face, what will you do? The overarching theme, at least in my opinion, of the last few quests has been centered around the relationship of the Lotus and the Tenno, and what would happen to it under certain outside influence, most notably from Ballas, the Sentients, and even the Man on the Wall. As I mentioned in the previous video, it does at least appear that the Tenno are only being shown a compromised Lotus, sounding very zombie-like when speaking about them.
The Tenno, the enemy.
Which generally equates to someone or something manipulating the narrative to achieve a specific goal. And yet, in the latest installment of the new war, it's obvious something isn't exactly right with Nata, and it's entirely possible she is seeing through whatever entities have her mind under restraint. Although I can't say I know exactly what this contraption here is, what it does, and most importantly, how it affects the Lotus. Will it intensify the manipulations being run through her head, wiping her mind of any shred of the Lotus she had left? Maybe, maybe not. But that's what we have to go off, at least for the time being. Remember being able to choose dialogue in quests? I've actually been thinking a lot about how Warframe has utilized the choice mechanic in game, showing up in quite a few of the quests, but as of now, it really hasn't amounted to much. Remember quests? You know what? Don't answer that. Personally, I'm curious as to how this might play out if we're applied to our eventual meeting with the Lotus. Like, if you were given the chance to choose what you would do, there are usually, 3 choices, right? So let's say the first is, you take her back. This would essentially bring the state of the orbiter back to the way it was, with the real Lotus appearing again during missions and quests and junk and stuff, and the story would continue on, with the Lotus basically back in her little area on the moon, hooked back up to the helmet and once again assuming the role of our surrogate mother and mentor. This choice would most likely be considered the light selection, although it's never really been established as good and evil over something more subtle as like yin and yang, so I'm just going off what the colors typically mean. The next option would obviously be to kill her. This would keep the orbiter in its current state, maybe with the Mecha Lotus still at the helm, unfortunately, but who knows, maybe it would allow for Ortis to take over or something instead. Point being is the true Lotus would no longer exist in your world, remembered only as fragments and footnotes in the lore and quests. Your interactions with her in the world would cease to be forever, and maybe this might carry with it consequences with other NPCs down the line. Obviously, this would be the dark selection and would color your little circle thing accordingly. I'm guessing for a lot of you that choose this one, it's probably already pretty dark right now, so it might not even move much with this choice, but I digress. Final choice? You leave her alive, but choose to part ways. This would be similar to the last choice, except for the fact that the Lotus remains in the world, and you're more than likely going to come across her in some way, shape, or form before too long. Maybe in a quest, maybe as an invasion. Again, I think that would be super cool if Nata would show up in random quests with a bunch of sentients and attacked you, like the Stalker or the Syndicates. I think I actually mentioned that in a video in the past, potentially, I don't know, but you get the point. This would represent the balanced decision, the middle ground option, if you will, and admittedly, as I think about it right now, would probably be the choice with the most interesting potential consequences. Let me preface this by saying that all of this will most likely never happen given how much work it would require in-game, essentially like having all 3 of Link's timelines exist simultaneously in one world, but this is YouTube and we can consider the possibilities. So, given what you already know, what would you choose? If you want, make a decision now in your head, but just keep it in the back of your mind for the time being, because I want to present to you what I feel are the most important aspects of what we now know about the situation as a whole regarding the new war. Some things I would say make a little bit more sense now, and other things are still a little bit cloudy, such as the fact that during Apostasy, this scene is played out as another memory, or if nothing else, the Tenno somehow cannot interact in the scene, something that's consistent with visions portrayed through the mask. Another thing of note is that whereas the Man on the Wall makes his presence known in Chimera, he is noticeably absent from Apostasy, and the ephemeral guide is white versus black. Personally, I think they come from the same source, the change in color merely being another thing to throw us off, but the argument could be made they are different or from different entities given the color variance. What we do know is how Ballas was here, as it could be argued he may have even put her here to begin with him offering knowledge of the Void and the Cradle to Hunhao during the Sacrifice quest. I think it should also be known that, let's call it the Void for the time being, seems to have the ability to alter or manipulate memory. Take, for instance, the end of the Sacrifice quest. It's pretty obvious this idea was one we were made to have, and in the same vein, I'm not entirely convinced the dialogue we see now in the Ropa Lotus fight is accurate. Looking at the dialogue during the Natah quest, it would appear the Lotus, or Natah, or whoever she was at that point, knew exactly what she was doing in the beginning, a conscious choice to protect the Tenno. The main part of her initial plan was initiated, destroying the Orokin, which would have completed her mission with the only thing left to destroy the Tenno, and the only reason for not killing the Tenno being the fact that she herself couldn't have children. This lines up with the ideals of the sentients and why they are even at war in the first place. A lot of it is based around their desire for vengeance regarding the sterility their initial trip to the Void incurred, and Ballas has been playing both sides since the very beginning. Our curiously convenient trip to his cell, attempting to make us want to feel pity for how frail and broken this once proud Orokin looks, playing on the Tenno's pain immediately after the Lotus left them, but doesn't seem to be that much of a detriment in the end once the leash is dropped, you know? Truth be told, I would gather he's enjoying his new existence just fine, but isn't willing to emerge from the shadows quite yet. So overall, here's what I gather so far. Ballas, along with whoever he is working with, and that could be any number of people at this point, are dead set on having the Lotus die. And it looks like they're baiting the Tenno to do it. You could argue the motivations, but it's pretty obvious. In the same vein, it could be vice versa in the fact that the Lotus is the key to killing the Tenno. Also, I think I finally understand the concept behind the Chimera. Something many of you in the comments have actually been trying to explain to me, and I just never really picked up on it. So, if I'm seeing this correct, the Lotus is 3 parts, like the Chimera, with 3 different heads, right? And it seems like all 3 of these heads that she wears have a different way of thinking. First, we have the Lotus, which could be perceived as the helmet, which, even looks like a lotus. Then we have Natah, potentially the harness she's sitting in here, although I'm not even sure that's Natah, more so maybe a method of control over her that makes her believe that she is the Natah of old, one that has disregarded every interaction with the Tenno as a manipulation. Kind of like the Lotus helmet could potentially alter her thought patterns to behave in a manner suited to the Orokin. Perhaps this is where the Lotus has been getting all her information from regarding basically everything we did before she left, right? Like all of our quests and our overall objectives, you name it. Now, the third part, I know you're all going to hate me for saying this, but I got to do it. I can't help but believe this is Margulis. And before you shower me with she's dead, she went to the Jade Light, this, that, and the other thing, let me remind you first, the Orokin are really masters of living beyond death, so to speak. They transfer consciousness like we change our underwear. So while I am saying Margulis faced the Jade Light, whatever that actually is, I'm also saying, given what we've seen of Ballas's actions so far, betraying the Orokin, siding with the sentients, releasing the Lotus, cheating death on his own, baiting the Tenno, is it really that hard to think that he didn't somehow preserve whatever he could of this person, his true love that he pretty much destroyed all of existence for? Maybe even using the Lotus helmet as the way of allowing her to live on? I mean, that's exactly his MO. Ballas even says it himself, for God's sake.
I will not abandon you again, Margulis.
Also, I'm no longer certain what the significance of this area even is, because whereas the apostasy cutscene alludes to the fact that her being hooked up has some significance, when she's placing the Tenno in the orbiter for the first time, she's not hooked up to anything. Who did that? Look, everyone, there's way more to this, and we're just barely peeking into the abyss at this point. Let me know in the comments if your opinion of what your meeting with the Lotus would be like, if you had a choice, mind you, changed at all, given what we talked about. You know me, I'll be keeping a watchful eye out, and if enough of you participate, I may even post the results in a future video like I did with the top 5 frames upload a while back. At any rate, hope you all enjoyed today's video, and I hope I got you thinking a little bit. Like I said, we're only getting started with this topic. So, hope you have a wonderful day today, a wonderful rest of your week. Do your best to stay safe out there, and I'll talk at you on the next one. Take care, everybody. Bye.